Hello everyone! I hope you're ready for another adventure because today Wayne reads The 100-Penny Box by Sharon Bell Mathis. Always remember that if you want to follow along with the words to this adventure, all you have to do is press the CC button in your YouTube link to be able to follow along with the words. Now, I think that North Star is going to be the great person that can join us for today's adventure as we celebrate Black History Month. Are you ready to jump into this adventure, North Star? North Star is ready, so let's jump in. The 100-Penny Box. Michael sat down on the bed that used to be his and watched his great-great-aunt, Aunt Dew, rocking in the rocking chair. He wanted to play with the 100-penny box, especially since it was raining outside. But Aunt Dew was singing a long song again. Sometimes when she sang the song, she would forget who he was for the whole day. Then she would call him John. John was his father's name. Then his mother would say, "He's Mike, Aunt Dew. His name is Michael. John's name is John. His name is Michael." But if his father was home, Aunt Dew would just say, "Where's my boy?" Then it was hard to tell her whether she meant him or his father, and he would have to wait until she said something more before he knew which one she meant. Aunt Dew didn't call his mother any name at all. Michael had heard his father and mother talking in bed late one night. It was soon after they came home from Atlanta to bring back Aunt Dew. "She won't even look at me. Won't call my name, nothing," his mother had said, and Michael could tell she had been crying. "She doesn't like me, I know it. I can tell. I do everything I can to make her comfortable." His mother was crying hard. "I rode half the way across the city, all the way to Mama D's, to get some homemade ice cream, some decent ice cream. Mama D said, the ice cream be melted before you get home. So I took a cab back and made her lunch and they gave her ice cream. I sat down at the table and tried to drink my coffee. I wanted to talk to her, say something, but she sat there and ate the ice cream and looked straight ahead at the wall and never said nothing to me. She talks to Mike, and if I come home around, she even stops talking sometime." His mother didn't say anything for a while, but then he heard her say, "I care about her, but she's making me miserable in my own house." Michael heard his father say the same thing he always said about Aunt Dew. "She's a 100-year-old lady, baby." Sometimes his father would add, "And when I don't have nobody around, she was there. Look here, after Big John and Junie drowned, she gave me a home. I didn't have one. I didn't have nothing. No mother, no father, no nobody. Nobody but her. I've loved her all of my life, like I love you. And that tough, beautiful boy you made, standing right outside the door and listening for all he's worth, he's supposed to be in his room asleep." Michael remembered he had run back to his room and gotten back into bed and gotten up again and tiptoed over to the door to close it a little bit and to shut off some of the light shining from the bathroom onto Aunt Dew's face. Then he looked at Aunt Dew and wished she'd wake up and talk to him, like she did when she felt like talking and telling him all kinds of stories about people. "Hold tight, Ruth," he had heard his father say at night. "She knows we want her. She knows it. And, baby, sweet woman, you doing fine. Everything you doing is right." Then Michael could hear the covers moving where his mother and father were, and he knew he was putting his arms around his mother, because sometimes he saw them still asleep in the morning, and that's the way they looked. But he was tired of remembering now, and he was tired of Aunt Dew singing, and singing, and singing. "Aunt Dew," Michael whispered, close to his great-aunt wrinkled face, "can we play with the 100-penny box? Precious Lord, Aunt Dew, let's count the pennies out. Take my hand. Aunt Dew, lead me on." Michael thought for a moment. He knew the large, scratched wooden box was down beside the dresser, on the floor where he could easily get it. Except, it was no fun to count the pennies alone. It was always better when Aunt Dew whacked him a little and said, "Stop right there, boy. You know what the penny means." And he'd say, "You tell me." And she would tell him. But when she started singing, it was hard to stop her. At least when she was dancing, what she called moving to the music, she'd get tired after a while, and then would tell him all about the pennies and help him count them too. Michael cupped his large hands. Everybody talked about how large his hands were for his age. Around his great aunt's ear, "Aunt Dew," he said loudly. Aunt Dew stopped rocking hard and turned and looked at him. But he didn't say anything, and she didn't say anything. Aunt Dew turned her head and began to sing again, exactly where she had left off. "Let me stand." Michael moved away from the rocking chair and sat back down on the bed. Then he got up and went to the dresser. He reached down and picked up the heavy, scratched 100-penny box from the floor, walked to the bedroom door, and stood there for a moment before he went out. There was no way to stop Aunt Dew once she started singing that long song. Michael walked down the hall and held the huge box against his stomach. He could still hear Aunt Dew's high voice. "I am weak, I am worn." "What's wrong?" his mother asked when he walked into the kitchen and sat down on the chair and stared at the floor. He didn't want to answer. "Oh," his mother said, and reached for the 100-penny box in his arms. "Give me that thing," she said. "That goes today. Soon as Aunt Dew sleep, that thing goes in the furnace." Michael almost jumped out of the chair. He wouldn't let go of that huge, heavy box. He could hear his grand-aunt's voice. She was singing louder. "Lead me through the night, precious Lord, take my hand." "You can't take the 100-penny box," Michael cried. "I'll tell Daddy if you take it and burn it up in the furnace, like you burned up all the rest of Aunt Dew's stuff." Then Michael thought of all the things he and Aunt Dew had hidden in his closet, and almost told his mother. His mother walked closer to him and stood there, but he wasn't afraid. Nobody was going to take Aunt Dew's 100-penny box. Nobody, nobody, nobody. "Aunt Dew's like a child," his mother said quietly. "She's like you. She thinks she needs a whole lot of stuff. She really doesn't. I'm not taking her pennies. You know I wouldn't take her pennies. I'm just getting rid of that big, old, ugly wooden box always underfoot." Michael stood up. "No," he said. "Mike, did you just say no to me?" his mother asked. She put her hands on her hips. "I mean," Michael said, and tried to think fast, "Aunt Dew won't go to sleep if she doesn't see her box in the corner. Can I take it back and then you can let her see it? And then when she goes to sleep, you can take it?" "Go put it back in her room then," his mother said. "I'll get it later." "Okay," Michael said, and he held the heavy box tighter and walked slowly back the hall down to the small bedroom that used to be his. He opened the door and went in and put the 100-penny box down on the floor and sat down on it, staring at his aunt. She wasn't singing, just sitting. "John boy," she said. "Yes, Aunt Dew," Michael answered. She didn't care that this time she was calling him John again. He was trying to think. "Put my music on." The music wasn't going to help him think, because the first thing she was going to do was make him move, too. But Michael got off the 100-penny box and reached under his bed and pulled out his blue record player that he had got for his birthday. He had already plugged it into his wall when he heard her say, "Get my own Victoria, the one your father gave me." "Mama threw it out," Michael said, and he knew he had already told her a lot of times. "It was broken." "Your mama gonna throw me out soon," she said. Michael stood and stared at his great-great-aunt. "Mama can't throw people out," he said. "Put my music on, boy," Aunt Drew said again, "and be quick about it." "Okay," Michael said, and he turned the record player on and got the record. Aunt Dew's favorite, that they had saved and hidden in the bottom of the drawer. The dusty chip record was of a singing lady, that long song, "Precious Lord, take my hand." Michael turned it down low. Aunt Dew started humming, and Michael sat down on the bed and tried to think about what he'd do with the 100-penny box. Aunt Dew got up from her rocking chair and stood up. She kept her arms down by her side and made her thin hands into fists and clenched her lips tight and moved real slow in one spot. Her small shoulders just went up and down, up and down. "Get up, John boy," she said. "Move with Drubit Thomas." "I don't feel like dancing," Michael said, and he kept sitting on the bed. But he watched his great-great-aunt move both her thin arms from one side and then to the other, and move her hands about and hold her dress. Then she stopped and started all of a sudden again, just swinging her arms and moving her shoulders up and down and singing some more. Every time the record ended, he'd start it again. When he was playing it for the third time, he said, "Aunt Drew, where will you put the 100 pennies if you lose your honey-pitted box?" "When I lose my 100-penny box, I lose me," she said, and she kept moving herself from side to side and humming. "I mean, maybe you need something better than an old cracked-up wacky-dacky box with the top broken." "It's my cracked-up wacky-dacky box with the top broken," said Aunt Drew. And Michael saw her move her shoulders real high that time. "Them's my years in that box," she said. "That's me in that box." "Can I hide the 100-penny box, Aunt Drew?" Michael asked, hoping she'd say yes and not ask him why. He'd hide it like the other stuff she'd ask him to hide, and had even told him where to hide it most of the time. "No, don't hide my 100-penny box," Aunt Drew said out loud. "Leave my 100-penny box right alone. Anybody takes my 100-penny box takes me." "Just in case," Michael said impatiently, and wished his great-great-aunt would sit back down in her chair so he could talk to her. "Just in case Mama puts it in the furnace when you sleep, like she puts all your stuff in the furnace in the basement." "What's your mama name?" "Oh no," Michael said. "You keep on forgetting my mama's name? That was the only thing bad about being 100 years old like Aunt Drew. You kept on forgetting things that were important." "Hush, John boy," Aunt Drew said, and stopped dancing and humming and sat back down on the chair and put the quilt over her legs. "You keep on forgetting, I don't." "You do. You keep on forgetting." Do I forget to play with you when you worry me to play to death?" Michael didn't answer. "Do I forget to play with you when you want?" "No." "Okay. What's your mama name? Who's that in my kitchen?" "Mama's name is Ruth, but this isn't your house. Your house is in Atlanta. We went to get you and now you live with us." "Ruth." Michael saw Aunt Drew staring at him again. Whenever she stared at him like that, he knew that what she'd say next. Sometimes it had nothing to do with what they had even been talking about. "You John's baby," she said, still staring at him. "You look like John spit you out." "That's my father." "My great-nephew," Aunt Drew said. "Only one ever even care about me." Aunt Drew rocked hard in her chair, and then Michael watched her. He got off the bed and turned off the record player and sat the record on the bottom drawer. Then he sat down on the 100-penny box again. "See that tree out there?" Aunt Drew said, and pointed her finger straight toward the window, with a large tree pressed up against it. Michael knew exactly what she'd say. "Didn't have no puny-looking trees down there near my house," she said. "Dubit Thomas, that's me, and Henry Thomas. That was my late husband, and had the biggest, tallest, prettiest trees in the widest yard in all Atlanta. And John, that was your daddy. Liked it most because he was city, and my 5 sons, Henry Jr. and Troop and Lat, and the twins, Booker and Jay. Well, it didn't make no never mind because it was always there. But when my oldest niece, Junie, and her husband, we called him Big John, brought your daddy down to visit every summer, they couldn't get the suitcase in the house good before he was climbing up and falling out of trees. We almost had to feed them up trees. Aunt Drew, we have to hide the box." And Junie and Big John went out on the water, and I was feeling funny all day. Didn't know what. Just feeling funny. I told Big John, I said, "Big John, that boat old. Nothing but a piece of junk." But he fooled around and said, "We taking it out." I looked and I saw him and Junie out on the water. Then it wasn't nothing. Both gone. Boat turned over going downstream. Your daddy, brand new little britches on, just standing there, looking. Wasn't saying nothing. No hollering. Tried to give him a big old hunk of potato pie, but he would just look at me. Just looking and standing. Wouldn't eat none of that pie. Then I said, "Run and get Henry and the boys." He looked at me, and he looked at the water. He turned around real slow and walked toward the west field. He never run. All you could see was them stiff little britches, red they was, moving through the corn, bare-waisted he was. When we found the boat later, he took it clean apart. What was left of it, every plank, and pushed it back in the water. I watched him. Wasn't a pea to the boast left. Not a splinter. Aunt Du, where can we hide the box? What box? The 100-penny box. We can't hide the 100-penny box. If she got to take the 100-penny box, she may as well take me. We have to hide it. No, we don't. It's my box. It's my house, and I said we have to hide it. How are you going to hide a house, John? Not the house, the 100-penny box. It's my box. Michael was beginning to feel desperate, but he couldn't tell her that his mother had said, "Suppose Mama takes it when you go to sleep." Aunt Du stopped rocking and stared at him again. "Like John just spit you out," she said. "Go on and count them pennies, boy. Lest you worry me in my grave if you don't." Dubit Thomas's 100-penny box. Dubit Thomas, 100 years old, and I got a penny to prove it each year. Michael got out the 100-penny box and sat on the floor by his great-great-aunt's skinny feet, stuck inside his father's old slippers. He pulled the big old wooden box towards him and lifted the lid and reached in and took out the small coin rose print sack filled with pennies. He dumped the pennies out onto the box. He was about to pick up one penny and put it in the sack the way they played, and say one, when his great aunt spoke. "Why you want to hide my 100-penny box?" "To play," Michael said, after he thought for a moment. "Play now," she said. "Don't hide my 100-penny box. I got to keep my 100-penny box, and when I don't see my box, I don't see me either." "One," Michael said, and dropped the penny back in the sack. 1874, Drew said. "Year I was born. Slavery was over. Black men in Congress and running things. They were in charge. It was the Reconstitution." Michael counted 27 pennies back into the old print sack before she stopped talking about Reconstruction. 1901, Aunt Drew said. "I was 27 years old. Birthed my twin boys," Hattie said. "Dubit, you got 2 babies?" I asked Henry Thomas. I said, "Henry Thomas, what them boys look like?" By the time Michael had counted to 56 pennies, his mother was standing at the door. 1930, Aunt Doobie said. "Depression. Henry Thomas, my late husband, died after he had put the 56 penny in my box. He had the double pneumonia and no decent shoes, and he worked too hard. Said he was going to sweat the trouble out of his lungs. Couldn't do it. Same year I sewed that fancy dress for Rena Coles. She was 100 bows all over that dress. I was sewing bows and tying bows and twisting bows and cursing all the time. Was her 4th husband, and she wants a dress full of bow ribbons? Henry, the one started that box, you know. Put the first 36 pennies in it for me. It was for my birthday. After 56, I put them all in myself." "Aunt Du, time to go to bed," his mother said, standing at the door. "Now I'm not sleepy," Aunt Du said. "Johnny boy, me just talking. Why don't you call him John? Look like John spit him out. Why do you gotta call that boy something different than his daddy?" Michael watched his mother walk over and open the window wide. "We'll get some fresh air in here," she said. "Then, Aunt Du, you can take your nap better and feel good when you wake up." Michael wouldn't let his mother take the sack of pennies out of his hand. He held them tight, then she let go. "I'm not sleepy," Aunt Du said. "This child and me is just talking." "I know," his mother said, pointing her finger at him a little, "but we're going to take our nap anyway. I got a long time to sleep, and I ain't ready now. Just leave me and sit here in this little narrow piece of room. I'm not bothering anybody." "Nobody said you're bothering anyone. But as soon as I start making that meatloaf, you're going to go to sleep in that chair and fall out and hurt yourself. And John will wonder where I was and say I was on the telephone and that'll be something all over again. Well, I'll sit by the floor, and if I fall, I'll be there already, and it won't be nobody's business but my own." "Michael," his mother said, and took the sack of pennies out of his hand and laid it on the dresser. Then she reached down and closed the lid of the 100-penny box and pushed it against the wall. "Go out of the room, honey, and let Mama help Aunt Du into bed." "I've been putting Dubit Thomas to bed a long time. I can still do it," Aunt Du said. "I'll just help you a little," Michael heard his mother say through the closed door. As soon as his mother left the room, he'd go in and sneak the 100-penny box out. But where would he hide it? Michael went to the bathroom to think, but his mother came in to get Aunt Du's washcloth. "Why are you looking like that?" she asked. "If you want to play, go in my room. Play there, or in the living room. But then don't go bothering Aunt Du. She needs her rest. Michael went to his father's and mother's room and lay down on the king bed and tried to think of a place to hide the box. He had an idea. He'd hide it down in the furnace room and sneak Aunt Dew downstairs to see it so she'd know where it was. Then maybe they could sit in the basement steps inside and play with it sometimes. His mother would never know, and his father wouldn't care as long as Aunt Dew was happy. He could even show Aunt Dew the big pipes and the little pipes. Michael heard his mother close the bedroom door and walk down the hall towards the kitchen. He'd tell Aunt Dew right now that they had a good place to hide the 100-penny box, the best place of all. Michael got down on the huge bed and walked quietly back towards the hallway and knocked on the door very quietly, too lightly for his mother to hear. Aunt Dew didn't answer. "Aunt Dew," he whispered, after he opened the door and tiptoed in the bed. "It's me, Michael." Aunt Dew was crying. Michael looked at his great-great-aunt and tried to say something, but she just kept crying. She looked extra small in this bed, and the covers were so close around her neck. He moved them down a little bit, and then her face didn't look so small. He waited to see if she'd stop crying, but she didn't. He went out of the room and down the hall and stood near his mother. She was chopping up the celery. "Aunt Dew's crying," he said. "Aunt Dew's all right. She's crying really hard. When you've lived for as long as she has lived, honey, sometimes you cry. She'll be all right. She's not sleepy. You shouldn't make her go to bed if she doesn't want to. Daddy never makes her go to sleep. You say you're not getting sleepy either, but you always go to sleep. Aunt Dew's bigger than me. She needs naps." "Why?" "Michael, go play, please," his mother said. "I'm tired and I'm busy, and she'll hear your noise and she'll never go to sleep." "She doesn't have to go to sleep if she doesn't want," Michael yelled, and didn't care if he got smacked. "We were just playing, and then you came in and make her cry. Without a nap, she's irritable and won't eat. She has to eat. She'll get sick if she doesn't eat. You made her cry," Michael yelled. "Michael John Jefferson," his mother said too quietly. "If you don't get away from me with that and stop that yelling and stop that screaming and leave me alone." Michael stood there for a long time before he walked away. "Mike," his mother called, but he didn't answer. All he did was stop walking. His mother came down the hall and put her arm around him and hugged him a little bit, and he walked him back into the kitchen. Michael walked very stiffly. He didn't like any hugging. He wanted to go back to Aunt Dew. "Mike," his mother said, leaning against the counter and still holding him. Michael let his mother hold him, but he didn't hold her back. All he did was watch the pile of chopped celery. "Mike, I'm going to give Aunt Dew this tiny mahogany chest your daddy made in a workshop class when he was a teenager. It's really perfect for that little sack of pennies. And when she sees the scarf she made, the one I keep on her dresser, she'll like it just as much as that big old clumsy box. She won't even miss that big old ugly thing. The 100-penny box isn't even bothering you." His mother didn't answer, but Michael heard her sigh. "You don't even care about Aunt Dew's stuff," even though he yelled a little. He even pulled away from his mother. He didn't care at all about her hugging him. Sometimes it seemed to him that grown-ups never cared about anything unless it was theirs and nobody else's. He wasn't going to be like that when he grew up and could work and could do anything he wanted to do. "Mike," his mother said quietly, "do you remember that teddy bear you had? The one with a crooked head? We could never sit him quite right because of the way you kept him bent all the time. You'd bend him up while you slept with him that night and bent him when you hugged him, played with him. Do you remember that, Mike? Why did she have to talk about a dumb old teddy bear? You wouldn't let us touch that teddy bear. I mean, it was all torn up and tossing its stuff all over the place. And your daddy wanted to get rid of it, and I said, no. Mike will let us know when he doesn't need the teddy bear anymore. So you held on to that teddy bear and protected it from all kinds of monsters and people. Then one day, you didn't play with it anymore. I think it was when little Corky moved next door. Corky's not little. I'm sorry, yes, Corky's big. He's a very big boy. But Corky wasn't around when you and I cleaned up your room a little while back. We got rid of a lot of things so that Aunt Dew could come and be more comfortable. That day, you tossed that crooked teddy bear on top of the heap and never even thought about it. I did think about it, he said. But you knew you didn't need it anymore. his mother whispered and rubbed his shoulder softly. But it's not the same with Aunt Dew. She will still hold on to everything that is hers, just to hold on to them. She will hold them tighter and tighter, and she will not go forward and try a new life. This is a new life for her, Mike. You must help her have this new life and not let her go backwards to something she can never go back to. Aunt Dew does not need that huge, broken, half-rotten wooden box that you stumble all over the house with, just to hold one tiny sack of pennies. I don't stumble around with it. His mother reached down and kissed the top of his head. You're the one that loves the old box, Mike. I think that's it. Michael felt the kiss in his hair, and he felt his arms around him and saw the pile of celery. His mother didn't understand. She didn't understand what a 100-penny box meant. She didn't understand that a new life wasn't very good if you had to have everything old taken away from you, just for a dumb little stupid old ugly little red box. A shiny, ugly, nothing box that didn't even look like it was big enough to hold a sack of 100 pennies. Mike put his arms around his mother. Maybe he could make her understand. He hugged her hard. That's what he had done, hugged him. All Aunt Dew wants is her 100-penny box, Mike said. That's the only thing. And all you wanted was that teddy bear, his mother had answered. You can't burn it, Michael said, and moved away from his mother. You can't burn any more of Aunt Dew's stuff. You can't take the 100-penny box. I said you can't take it. Okay, his mother said. Michael went down the hall and opened the door to his room. No, Mike, his mother said, and hurried after him. Don't go in there now. I am, Michael said. His mother snatched him and shut the door and pulled him into the living room and threw him into the stuffed velvet chair. You're as stubborn as your father, she said. Everything your way or else. She was really angry. Just sit there, she said. Don't move until I tell you. As soon as he heard his mother chopping celery, he got up. He tiptoed into his room and shut the door without a sound. Aunt Dew was staring at the ceiling. There was perspiration on her forehead, and there was water in the dug-in places in her eyes. Aunt Dew, what you want, John boy? I'm sorry Mama's mean to you. Ain't nobody mean to Dubik Thomas, 'cause Dubik Thomas ain't mean to nobody. Aunt Dew said, and reached her hand out from under the cover and patted Mott's face. Your Mama Ruth, she move around, and she would do what she gotta do. First time I see her, I say, John, she look frail. But she ain't, he said. No, she ain't frail. I make out like I don't see her all the time, Aunt Dew said, and she winked her eye. But she know I see her. If she think I don't see her, that ain't the truth. Dubit Thomas like everybody. But me and her can't talk like me and John talk, 'cause she don't know what me and John know. I closed the door, Michael said. You don't have to sleep if you don't want to. I've been asleep all day, John, Aunt Dew said. Michael leaned over his bed and looked at his great-aunt. You haven't been asleep all day, he said. You've been sitting in the chair, and you've been talking to me. And then you were dancing in the record, and then we were counting pennies, and we got to 56, and Mama came. Where's my 100-penny box? I got it, Michael answered. Where you got it? Right here in my bed. Watch out while I sleep. He'd tell her about the good hiding place later. Okay, he said. Aunt Dew was staring at him. Look like Johnny just spit you out, she said. Michael moved away from her. He turned his back and leaned against the bed and stared at the 100-penny box. All of a sudden, it looked real old and beat up. Turn around and let me look at you. Michael turned around slowly and looked at his great-great-aunt. John, it's me, Michael, said. Michael. He went and sat down on the 100-penny box. Come here so I can see you, she said. Michael didn't move. Stubborn like your daddy. Don't pay your Aunt Dew no mind. Michael didn't get up. Go back to your counting of my pennies. Start at 57, where you left off. 1931. Lat married that school teacher. We roasted 3 pigs. Just acting a fool. Everybody. Lat gave her a pair of yellow shoes for her birthday. Walked off down the road one evening like she was pleased she did. Had on them yellow shoes. Rode a freight train clear up to Chicago. Left his food on the table and all of his clothes were ironed. 6 times she could come back and stay for a while and then go again. Truck used to say, wouldn't be my wife. But Truck never did get married nobody. Only thing he cared about was his car. He would cover it with a raincoat when it rained if he could. First you know me, then you don't, Michael said. Michael John Jefferson, what your name is, Aunt Dew said. Should be plain John like your daddy. And your daddy's daddy. Instead of all this new stuff. Named John and everyone's saying Michael. Aunt Dew was smiling. Come here, boy, she said. Come here close. Let me look at you. Got a head full of hair. Michael got up at the 100-penny box and stood at the bed. Get closer, Aunt Dew said. Michael did. Turn these covers a little more. This narrow piece of room don't have any air for my big house did. I took a picture of your house, Michael said, and turned the covers back some more. My house bigger than your picture, Aunt Dew said. Way bigger. Michael leaned close to her on his bed and propped up his elbows on the large pillow under his head. Tell me about the barn again, he said. Dubit and Henry Thomas had the biggest, reddest barn in all Atlanta, G.A. And the swing daddy broke, Michael asked as he put his head on the covers. Her chest was so thin under the thick quilt that he hardly felt it. He reached up and pushed her wispy strands of hair away from her closed eyes. Did more pulling it down than he did swinging. Tell me about the swimming pool, Michael said. He touched Aunt Dew's chin and covered it up with only 3 fingers. It was a long time before Aunt Dew answered. Wasn't no swimming pool, she said. I done told you it was a creek. Plain old creek. And your daddy got bit by a cottonmouth. Don't go to sleep, Aunt Dew, Michael said. Let's talk. I'm tired, John. I can go count all the pennies all the way to the end if you want me to. Go ahead and count. When your 101 birthday comes, I'm going to put the new penny in like you said. Yes, John. Michael reached up and touched Aunt Dew's eyes. I have a good place for the 100-penny box, Aunt Dew, he said quietly. Go away. Let me sleep, she said. You wish you were back in your old house, Aunt Dew. I'm going back, Aunt Dew said. You sad? Hush, boy. Michael climbed all the way on the bed and put his whole self alongside his great aunt. He touched her arms. Are your arms 100 years old, he asked. It was his favorite question games. Aunt Dew murmured and turned a little away from him. He touched her face. Is your face and your eyes and your fingers 100 years old too? John, I'm tired, Aunt Dew said. Don't talk so. How do you get to be 100 years old? Michael asked, and raised up from the bed from one elbow and waited for his great aunt to ask. First you have to have a 100-penny box, his great aunt finally said. Where do you get it from? Michael asked. Somebody special got to give it to you, Aunt Dew said. And soon as they give it to you, you got to be careful lest it disappear. Aunt Dew, precious Lord. Aunt Dew, take my hand. Michael put his head down on Aunt Dew's thin chest beneath the heavy quilt and listened to her swing her long song. The end. Wow. That was a very interesting story. What did you think, North Star? I thought that part was interesting too. But we hope to see you for the next adventure, okay? We hope to see you on the next adventure here with Wayne Reads. Thank you for joining us for this amazing story. And we can't wait to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.